Does Samsung's latest flagship device offer enough to make it worth upgrading from the previous model? Or are these additions and tweaks only skin deep? Let's find out in this head-to-head, the Galaxy S24 Ultra versus the Galaxy S23 Ultra. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and if you have deep pockets, Samsung's Ultra line is one of the most obvious places to find your next phone. The company has just released this, the Galaxy S24 Ultra, and like its predecessor, it's an absolute beast. Let's get right into it. What are the main reasons to go with the new model? Well, there have been some physical design changes here, with a completely flat panel over the slightly curved item from before. This all but eliminates phantom touches and makes the phone a lot easier to use with one hand without touching something you don't want to and opening the wrong link. The display panel has also seen a change, but we'll talk about that in a minute. The new phone is significantly more squared off and sharper than before, which can make it a little bit uncomfortable for one-handers after a long usage stretch in one go, especially if you have smaller hands, but I think it looks quite dashing. Putting a case on it will alleviate this sharpness issue, though you will be covering up the new titanium frame. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, guys. I don't know if you'll really feel a difference between the titanium and the aluminium one that was used before, other than the shape. It's a more premium material, but on a phone, it doesn't seem to make much difference other than raising the price by $100. There aren't any weight savings here, and yeah, this phone, you heard it right, is $1,300. That's a lot of money. We are at least treated to Gorilla Glass armor, which is the coating on the front panel and should offer better scratch resistance to that marvelous display, which itself has seen an upgrade, especially in brightness. We have a claimed 2600 nits peak HDR brightness here, which really does make compatible content pop. It's noticeably brighter than last year's model, even in normal mode, not high brightness mode, which had a claimed 1750 nits in HDR content, so that's around a 1000 nit jump. Accentuating this extra clarity is Samsung's new anti-glare coating, which, while not perfect, does reduce reflections by a noticeable amount, so the S24 Ultra is much easier to use out in direct sunlight. And watching content, playing games, whilst excellent on the S23 Ultra, and you're definitely not going to be disappointed, it's just much better on the new model. Comparing the smaller details like speakers, fingerprint scanners, haptics, buttons, there didn't seem to be any noticeable difference between the two phones. If anything, the buttons are a little more tactile on the S24 Ultra, and the new phone's punch hole is a little bit smaller, and the bezels as well. The phone itself feels a tad more solid and polished, probably due to the fact that it has a flat display, not a curved one. But yeah, so far the difference wouldn't make me upgrade from the S23 Ultra to the S24 Ultra. I liked last year's model, it was really good, it still is really good. So yeah, it's a tough call. And this goes for the performance as well. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 is still super snappy and responsive, with the new 8 Gen 3 found in the new S24 Ultra feeling pretty similar in most use cases. If you're browsing social media, flipping back and forth between apps, you're likely not going to feel the difference between these. Playing games, you might find the super high-end titles like Genshin Impact, Real Racing 3, COD Mobile to be more consistent with fewer frame drops on the newer phone. At least I noticed this increase in base frame rate, but it's not a night and day difference. It's not like going from a Pixel 7a to a Galaxy S23 Ultra. And 12 GB of RAM is plenty too, and both last year's and this year's phones have that. They also both have 5000 mAh batteries with 45 watt wired charging, 15 watt wireless charging, and 4.5 watt reverse wireless charging. What does this mean? Well, in the real world, both phones can offer 2 days before you need to top them up. This was my experience with both of these phones actually. Most of the time I'd end up the second day with sort of between 5 and 15% battery life left. And I only had to top up the Galaxy S24 Ultra twice in my short review time with it. If all you do is game all day, you won't get 2 days of battery life out of either of these phones. But other than that, battery life was awesome, and there honestly wasn't a huge difference in my experience. Maybe the extra 10% at the end of the second day on the Galaxy S24 Ultra compared to the S23 Ultra, which really isn't that big a difference. Where you will find a difference, at least for now, is in the software features. Samsung's One UI software skin atop Android 14 has matured beautifully. Both the version 6 on the S23 Ultra and the 6.1 on the S24 Ultra are well laid out, easy to navigate, they look and feel very well done, built for the hardware on which they run, and will get heaps of software support as well. That said, Samsung is offering 7 years of software updates to the new model, and you will only get 4 more years of software updates for the older model. This is still loads of time, plenty in my opinion, before I'd want to upgrade. I usually don't hold on to my phone for more than 5 years, but if you do want to hold on to your phone for that long, maybe go with the S24 Ultra. Now, those software differences I talked about earlier. Samsung has introduced some new AI features not too dissimilar to what you'll find on sort of Google's Pixel stuff, and it's really good. You get an AI image editor in which you can move around and delete items from your images. You can also use the image remastering tool to increase clarity in a photo you've taken. Then there's the on-the-fly translation feature, which works shockingly well in my testing and would be really useful to those that travel a lot and need a translator in their pocket. Not to mention circle to search, which is where you can sort of tap and hold the bottom of the screen and then circle anything on your display to search for it on the internet. Again, a really useful feature if you don't know what an item is called in an image, for example. You don't get any of these features on the Galaxy S23 Ultra, at least not right now. We will get some AI features on that older model, but if you want guaranteed complete Galaxy AI features, you will have to go with the Galaxy S24 Ultra. Okay, the cameras. This is where Samsung has made some more interesting hardware changes, albeit not many of them. Most of the spec sheet has stayed relatively the same, but the company has replaced the 10 megapixel 10 times optical periscope with a 50 megapixel 5 times optical periscope. This means that when you zoom into 10 times, it's a crop on the sensor. You'll notice here that there's a new 5 times toggle in the camera app, where it went straight from 3 to 10x before. This translates to, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, just plain softer images when zooming deeper into a scene, as shown here with the grass at the bottom of the image. Samsung is adding contrast artificially to try and boost the sharpness at these longer focal lengths. By and large, it's not hugely noticeable at sort of 5 to 10 times, but at 30 times or more, the softness is very obvious, so that's actually quite disappointing to see. Since the rest of the cameras have stayed pretty much the same, it's harder to compare the rest of the images taken. They're very similar in tone, in sharpness, in dynamic range. The S23 Ultra's images contain maybe a little more magenta on the whole, though since that's likely to get One UI 6.1 soon, there will likely be camera tweaks that sort of make their way over as well. From a technical perspective, there's perhaps a little more pop with the older phone, but that could just be the phone brightening exposure a tad, where the newer one just keeps the scene a little dimmer. It's the same story in video. These phones do a stellar job at capturing in 4K Ultra HD 60p and even 8K 30p if you fancy it. These two devices are a little too close for my liking. If you have, say, a Galaxy S21 Ultra, by all means go out and buy the new one. It's great, it's going to be a vast improvement. However, going from the S23 Ultra to the S24 Ultra just feels like a waste in my opinion, especially if you like to get really long zoomed in photos. Yes, there have been some noticeable changes made, but none of them are really enough to make that move, and with regards to the new periscope zoom, it's actually a backward step. So I would hold on to your phone for another year, get some Samsung updates, get some of that AI goodness, and let's see what Samsung has in store for us with the S25 Ultra. That's it from me guys. Let me know in the comments what you think of these two phones. Last year's phone was just so good that the new one just feels a bit disappointing. Hit like if you enjoyed today's video and subscribe to never miss another upload. I've been Ryan Thomas with Android Police, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.